The vast, windswept steppes of Eastern Europe were a crucible of empires. For centuries, nomadic peoples had risen and fallen here. In the early 13th century, two such powers were on a collision course. The Cumans, fierce horsemen of the Pontic-Caspian region, faced a new threat. The Mongols, an emerging force from the east, were built on speed and ruthlessness. Their meeting would send a shockwave through Europe. The Cumans were no strangers to warfare, but the Mongols were different, driven by world conquest. The stage was set for a monumental clash. The Cumans, also known as Polovtsians by the Rus, were a Turkic nomadic people. They were a powerful confederation of tribes. These tribes shared a common language, culture, and way of life. For centuries, from the late 11th to the early 13th, they held sway over a vast territory. This domain, often called Cumania, stretched across the Pontic-Caspian steppe. They were the undisputed masters of this immense sea of grass. Their society was built around pastoral nomadism. They moved with their herds of horses, sheep and cattle, following the seasonal patterns of grazing. The horse was central to Cuman life. They were expert horsemen and skilled archers from a young age. Their cavalry was the backbone of their military might. The Cumans were deeply involved in the affairs of their settled neighbors. Despite their formidable reputation, the Cuman Confederation had inherent weaknesses. The Mongol Empire, forged in the early 13th century by the visionary leader Temujin, later known as Genghis Khan, was an entity unlike any the world had seen. It was born from the unification of disparate nomadic tribes on the harsh Mongolian plateau. Genghis Khan transformed these fractious groups into a disciplined, loyal, and incredibly effective military machine. Under his leadership, and that of his successors, the Mongols embarked on a campaign of expansion that would create the largest contiguous land empire in history. The Mongol military was the key to their success. It was built on a foundation of superb horsemanship, deadly archery, and unwavering discipline. Mongol tactics were sophisticated and brutal. They excelled at reconnaissance, intelligence gathering, and psychological warfare. The Mongol invasion of Eastern Europe was not a haphazard affair. It was part of a grand strategic plan. The initial Mongol encounters with the Cumans were brutal and decisive. The Mongols, employing their characteristic speed and ferocity, inflicted several defeats upon isolated Cuman tribes. Panic began to spread throughout Cumania. One of the most prominent Cuman leaders, Khan Khotan-Sutovich, recognized the existential threat posed by these new invaders from the east. Desperate, Khotan turned to his sometimes allies, sometimes enemies, the princes of Kievan Ruses. He journeyed to Galicia, to the court of Mstislavich the Bold, one of the most powerful and influential Ruses princes. Khotan's appeal was urgent and direct. He warned the Ruses princes that if they did not help the Cumans, they would be next. After much debate and persuasion, a coalition was formed. The combined Rus-Cuman army, brimming with confidence, set out to meet the Mongols in the spring of 1223. On May 31st, 1223, the Ruses-Cuman forces caught up with the Mongols near the Kalka River in present-day southeastern Ukraine. The coalition army was confident, perhaps overly so. The Cuman cavalry, along with Mstislav the Bold, crossed the river first, eager to engage the seemingly retreating Mongols. They charged headlong into what they believed was a fleeing enemy. However, the Mongol retreat was a deception. As the Cumans and Ruses engaged, the main Mongol army revealed itself. The hunters had become the hunted. The battle turned into a disaster for the coalition. The Mongols unleashed a devastating counterattack. Their horse archers rained arrows upon the disorganized Cuman and Ruses ranks. Mongol heavy cavalry smashed into their flanks, shattering formations. The Cuman forces broke first. The lack of coordination among the Ruses princes proved fatal. The defeat at the Kalka River was a devastating blow to the Cumans. Their military strength was shattered. Many of their best warriors and leaders lay dead on the battlefield. The Mongols, having demonstrated their terrifying superiority, continued their reconnaissance. Though they did not immediately occupy Cumania, they turned eastward, eventually returning to the main Mongol domains. However, the psychological impact of Kalka on the Cumans was profound. They knew that the Mongols would likely return, and they were now critically weakened and demoralized. In the years following Kalka, the Cuman confederation began to unravel. Some Cuman tribes submitted to Mongol authority, becoming vassals of the emerging Golden Horde. Others attempted to resist, but their efforts were fragmented and ultimately futile. The Battle of the Kalka River was more than just a defeat for a Rus-Cuman coalition. It was a chilling prelude to one of the most devastating periods in European history. The Mongol reconnaissance in force, led by Subutai and Jebe, had achieved its objectives with terrifying success. They had mapped the western steppes, assessed the military capabilities of the local powers, and demonstrated the overwhelming superiority of Mongol tactics and discipline. The sheer brutality and completeness of the victory at Kalka sent shockwaves across Eastern Europe. Many in Central and Western Europe remained largely ignorant of the scale of the Mongol threat. Kalka starkly exposed the fatal disunity among the European powers, particularly the Rus principalities. The Mongols were masters at exploiting such divisions. The defeat decimated the military strength and leadership of many Rus states, leaving them vulnerable to the much larger Mongol invasion that followed. The warnings of Khan Khotan had proven tragically prophetic.